Okay, so good afternoon. Let's reaffirm our refuge and bodhicitta motivation for being here.
I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha's the Dharma and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
You just did an hour and a quarter of meditation, right? So your mind should be in pretty good shape. Okay. So first there was a question that someone wrote down, and where is it? In the Vajrasattva practice, would you consider the regret of not having regret legitimate? Not trying to be obstinate, but truly I am having difficulty with a non-virtuous action that I don't yet want to stop. So I thought that was interesting, and it sounds like you do want to feel regret for this particular non-virtuous action. You're just not there yet. You're not ready to do that. Not ready to feel regret and then stop doing it. So I think that's a good thing. That sounds positive, because it sounds like you do have the wish or the aspiration at some point in the future to feel strong enough regret that you would be able to stop doing that action. So that's like leaving the door open. Yeah, leaving the door open rather than saying, oh no, this action is completely okay and I want to keep doing it and I don't ever want to stop. That's a little... Because I sometimes hear people say or read statements by people who have been harmed, right? They've experienced a lot of harm from somebody, and they say things like, I'm never going to forgive that person. I never want to forgive that person, right? Some people feel that way, like they have hurt me so much. They don't deserve my forgiveness, and I never want to go there. When I hear that, I feel really sad. Because I don't think they realize that when you're holding on to anger and hatred like that, you're harming yourself. That's like a really painful burden in your mind. And so to say, I never want to let go of that, is like, well, who's going to suffer the most from that? I don't think they realize that. But, when people say things like, well, that person hurt me really much, and I would like to be able to forgive them, but I just can't, not yet. So then there's, you're leaving the door open. You have some kind of hope, some kind of wish to get to the point one day when you can forgive. It's hard to do that, but at least to have the wish to do it. So I think it's a little bit similar here. Yeah, there's some action that maybe you've been doing a long time and you enjoy doing, and you're not yet ready to completely stop doing that. That's quite understandable. So I was thinking that maybe one thing that could be helpful would be to make lists of pros and cons. That can be very helpful. Get some paper and make some lists. Like, okay, what are the pros and cons of continuing that action? Not stopping it, but continuing it. And what are the pros and cons of stopping it? Yeah, so just investigate that and think about those. And you could think from the point of view of like, what are your reasons? What reasons do you have for not stopping? And what reasons would you have for stopping it? And another thing you might look at would be the consequences, the results. What would be the possible consequences of continuing that action? And what would be the consequences of stopping that action? So do a sort of exploration of that and see what, see what that looks like. That could be helpful. Those are just thoughts that I had. Because I think, our mind needs to be ready to do something or ready to feel a certain way. We can't necessarily force our mind, yeah? I don't think that works. Like, someone who says, I'm not ready to forgive. Well, you can't force that, yeah? You have some more work to do, some more thinking, contemplating, meditating to get to the point where you can forgive. And that could take a long time. It could take years. But it's worthwhile, to at least work on that. And then at some point, hopefully you will get to that point where you can feel, yes, I can forgive and let go. But you can't force that, right? So I think it's similar here, to changing behavior. When I read this question, I thought of a monk that I know, an American monk, and we were talking once, and he talked about his life earlier, before he started learning Buddhism. And he said there was a period of time when he worked on a fishing trawler. And that probably means, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands, I guess it depends on the size of the trawler, but probably every day a huge number of fish are killed. And he said something interesting. He said he doesn't really feel regret for that. And I thought, that's interesting. I didn't have a chance to ask, to ask more about that, like explore that. But I just, being a monk, being a Buddhist monk, a Mahayana Buddhist monk, and Buddhism is so much about compassion for all living beings, not killing living beings, treating them with compassion. So I just thought that was interesting. But maybe he just wasn't ready. Yeah, maybe he needed to do some more work on his mind. I mean, he certainly had stopped. He wasn't doing that anymore. But he found it hard to feel regret for whatever reason. So, yeah, it can take time sometimes to get to that point, and we can't force it. So we just kind of gently work on our mind and see what's going on, and maybe at some point it will happen. So then, just a few more words about the 8 worldly concerns. I can't seem to get that one up, get beyond that one. Well, I was reading this little book, about Vajrasattva practice, with teachings from Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe. And I read something in here about the 8 worldly concerns, about how, if we do actions with attachment just for this life, my own happiness in this life, then that's negative. But then he said, but if we're doing these, like if we're seeking good reputation or wealth or power in order to benefit others, that's dharma. That's not 8 worldly dharmas, but that's dharma. Yeah, so I thought, like, if you have a family, you're taking care of your family, or here we have a monastery, or if you're working to help homeless people, impoverished people, and you're doing things to acquire wealth, and maybe also fame, not fame in the sense of just in a selfish way, but just to let it be known what you are doing. But your motivation isn't selfish, isn't just my happiness right here in this life, but you're thinking of benefiting others. So it's going beyond yourself. Then he says that is not worldly dharma, that is dharma. And that's kind of like when we, before lunch, we recite a number of contemplations and verses. And they say things like, I'm eating this food to nourish the body and seeing it as medicine to sustain our life. Why do we want to stay alive? Yeah, not just to have a good time, enjoy ourselves, but we want to benefit others and also increase our own practice of Dharma. So the things that we do in our life can be transformed by transforming our mind and our attitude, going beyond just this one person and this one life, but expanding to include others and the future as well as this life. Because this topic can be a little tricky, and it can sometimes sound like we shouldn't experience any ordinary happiness or pleasure. But that's not the meaning. And I'll just read one last thing from volume 2, the section on the 8 worldly concerns in that book. So this is His Holiness talking. He's saying, the 8 worldly concerns center around attachment to the pleasures of just this life. While this life is important, clinging to its pleasures is problematic. The Buddha does not say that pleasure is bad or evil, right? Sometimes it sounds like that. People get that impression. You shouldn't have any pleasure. It's not like that. He says, pleasure is what it is. A nice experience that lasts a short while. It is fine to enjoy the good things we encounter. But becoming attached to them is another matter, because the attachment and the aversion that arises when we cannot get what we want causes problems in this and future lives and distracts us from fulfilling our spiritual yearnings. So it's fine to enjoy nice food and nice scenery and nice music, but try to do it without attachment, although it's not easy. But the problem isn't the pleasure, the nice experiences, it's the attachment, that mind that's sort of clinging and grasping and craving and wanting more. That's where things go wrong. And like he says, if you have attachment to one thing, it's inevitable that there'll be aversion to the opposite. Yeah, you have attachment to one type of experience, then the opposite type of experience is like, ew, yuck, I don't like that. And so your mind is, always kind of going back and forth, or up and down, liking, disliking, happy, unhappy, ecstatic, and miserable. So it's not such a stable state of mind. And I have heard or read that the Dalai Lama, when he's giving teachings to a large group of people, he advises people to spend half their time taking care of this life and half their time doing Dharma. Which, sometimes in the traditional teachings, they say, give up this life, renounce this life, almost like forget about this life, just 100% Dharma. I mean, maybe people like Milarepa can do that, but most people aren't at the point where they're able to do that. So that becomes a little, challenging. So this is more reasonable, half-half. Maybe for some people it's more like 1/4 and 3/4. So you just do what you can. But the real point is to try to find some time in your life for Dharma practice. And probably you'll find that it makes you happier. You feel better. You find a lot of benefit. And then naturally, you'll kind of want to do more. Yeah? It's just kind of the interest in doing more Dharma will grow naturally. Okay, one last thing. This is from the Buddha, a sutra of the Buddha, where he talks about how those with wisdom regard these 8 worldly concerns. So the Buddha says, the wise and mindful person knows them and sees that they are subject to change. Desirable conditions don't excite his or her mind, nor is he or she repelled by undesirable conditions. So this is where we can get with wisdom, just understanding these things are changeable. So we don't get all excited about good things and all miserable about not so good things. He or she has dispelled attraction and repulsion. They are gone and no longer present. Having known the dustless, sorrowless state, he or she understands rightly and has transcended cyclic existence. So that's talking about the kind of ultimate goal, when you're really beyond all forms of attachment and aversion and other afflictions. And yeah, they say that state is really blissful. The sorrowless state beyond suffering. So this is the ultimate goal, what we can reach if we are able to first, reduce our attachments and aversions, and then gradually get to the point where we can be free of them altogether. Okay, so then let's move on. Did you have the slides? So yesterday and this morning we looked at the topics of the precious human rebirth and also death and impermanence. So those are what Lama Tsongkhapa recommends to contemplate in order to get beyond clinging to this life, get beyond these 8 worldly concerns. And in the Lamrim, the longer versions of the Lamrim, full versions of the Lamrim, there's 3 sort of sections that the material is divided into. Sometimes they're called 3 scopes. There are 3 levels of practice. And the first of these is called the initial level of practice. And this is basically for those who become concerned about what lies beyond this life. They get beyond just being concerned about this life, and they think about what comes next. And they're encouraged to do so by contemplating these points. Okay, I have this precious human life, and with this life, I can do so much good. For example, in terms of spiritual practice. But this life is not going to last forever. It's going to come to an end at some point. And so I really shouldn't waste my time or procrastinate, but at least start doing some practices that will help me prepare for death and what lies after death. And the real point of that, from the, according to Buddhism, is to avoid going to an unfortunate situation in our next life, which is possible. We're fortunate now to have a human life, but Buddhism says that just because we're humans now doesn't mean we're always going to be human beings in all our future lives. There's no guarantee. And so there's other realms, other places we could be reborn. We could be born as animals or as hungry ghosts. There's also hell. So those are 3 places of rebirth, which are called the unfortunate realms, bad places to be born, because you have a lot of suffering. And on top of that, it's almost impossible to continue doing any spiritual practice. If you have the wish to achieve higher goals like enlightenment, then there's very little chance you would be able to continue doing that in those realms. So they are to be avoided at all costs. This is our number one, or at least the initial goal of spiritual practice, is to make sure we don't end up in one of these unfortunate realms. And then to do that, the means to ensure that we don't take rebirth in one of these unfortunate realms is 2 things. For someone following the Buddhist path, the first is taking refuge, which involves, contemplating the Buddha and his teachings, the Dharma, and the Sangha, those who are following the teachings. So getting to know their qualities and their abilities to help us, what they have to offer us in our life, in our spiritual practice, how they can benefit us, how they can, especially here with this first goal, how they can help us to avoid an unfortunate life in the next rebirth. And when a person has contemplated their qualities, their abilities to help us, and come to the point where they feel, I do want to follow this path, I want to take Buddha as my guide and follow his teachings, then they take this step of taking refuge. And that's like you kind of formally committing yourself to the Buddhist path. So I think many of the people here have done that, and it kind of marks the beginning of your formal commitment to the Buddhist path. But it's good to do this in an informed way, like know what you're doing and do it with understanding and the right mind, the right motivation, the right attitude. I've heard of situations in the past, like when Tibetan lamas would sometimes come to a place in America and they would give a public talk, and after the talk they would give refuge. And a lot of people would, jump off, I want to take refuge. But, not sure if they really understood what they were doing. Hopefully they did. But, it does sometimes happen. People rush into that, they get all emotional and take refuge, but then later, what did I do? Why did I do that? And then, give it up. So that's not a good thing. It's better to take your time, learn as much as you can, think about what you're doing, and do it, with the right understanding and motivation. So refuge is one step that we take to avoid an unfortunate rebirth. But the real most important thing is karma. Learning about karma and living and trying our best to live our life in accordance with karma. That's the main way to make sure that when this life comes to an end and our consciousness flies off to the next world, the next life, that we'll end up in a good situation rather than a bad one. Because it's up to our karma, not up to anybody else. Nobody else decides where we go, but it depends on the situation of our karma when we come to the end of our life. It also depends partly on the state of mind that we have at the time of death. That plays a factor as well. If we die with a lot of fear or with a lot of anger or with a lot of attachment and clinging, that's not a good state of mind to die with, and then there's a greater chance of going to an unfortunate rebirth in our next life. And on the other hand, if we can die with a positive state of mind, with good thoughts, virtuous thoughts, like taking refuge, meditating on love and compassion, doing whatever practices we are familiar with during our life. So doing something positive, constructive, virtuous at the time of death, that will ensure that our mind leaving this life, going to the next, it will go to a good situation. But to be able to have a positive state of mind at the time of death, we have to learn how to do that now. Okay, you can't wait till 5 minutes before you die and then try to figure out, okay, how do I generate love? How do I generate compassion? If you haven't done it before then, well, it's risky. Okay, so where are we now? Okay, so we have done the first 2 lines of 1, 2, 3, the 4th verse on page 31. So that starts with, by contemplating the freedoms and fortunes so difficult to find and the fleeting nature of your life, reverse the clinging to this life. Okay, so that's talking about renunciation with regard to this life. And then the next 2 lines are talking about renunciation with regard to samsara, or cyclic existence. So it says, by repeatedly contemplating the infallible effects of karma and the miseries of cyclic existence, reverse the clinging to future lives. So this is the main kind of renunciation. Usually when we talk about renunciation or the determination to be free, it's mainly this one. And it means, basically it means understanding that as long as we're in samsara, cyclic existence, then we're not really free. And we don't really have genuine, long-lasting pleasure and happiness. It's all unsatisfactory. It's very imperfect, like being in a prison or like being in a huge ocean full of dangers and we don't have anything to rescue us. So it's a very unfortunate situation. So one needs to contemplate that and generate that awareness, and then that will naturally lead to the wish to be free, the wish to be free of this situation. So that's renunciation of samsara. And so Lama Tsongkhapa recommends two things to contemplate. One is the infallible effects of karma, and the second is the miseries of cyclic existence. Okay, so we haven't really talked too much about karma here, but there's a lot of teachings on karma, going into lots of details about what's good karma and bad karma and so on. But this is a helpful way of understanding karma. These are called general characteristics of karma. They're kind of like general rules of karma, how karma works. So the word karma means action, and when we do actions with our body or with our speech or with our mind, our thoughts, then imprints of our actions are left on our mind, our consciousness, which is this kind of ongoing stream of this immaterial kind of energy that experiences things, knows things. So imprints are left on our mind, and then they're carried. They stay with the mind into the future until they meet with the right conditions, and then they ripen in the form of experiences. That's the general meaning of karma. And so these four characteristics of karma just describe kind of how karma works. So the first of the four is that karma is definite. Now that means that there's a definite connection between the kind of action that is done and the kind of result that is experienced. And in a very general way, we can talk about good karma and bad karma, virtuous karma and non-virtuous karma. So good karma or virtuous karma is the cause for good experiences, happiness, and having what we need, like food and clothes, and so good experiences, the kind of experiences we want to happen. And then bad karma or non-virtuous karma is the cause for bad experiences, for suffering and deprivation and pain and all the bad stuff that we don't want to happen. And so there's a definite correlation there. It can never work the other way. You can never do something negative, non-virtuous, and get happiness as a result. And by doing something virtuous, you won't get suffering as a result. So that's the meaning of karma being definite. And they sometimes use, to illustrate karma, they use the analogy of agriculture or gardening, which is helpful because, karma, talking about karmic seeds, something subtle, we can't really see those karmic seeds in our mind. They're not physical. But we are all very familiar with gardening, and you put seeds in the ground and then take care of them, give them the right conditions, and they will grow and produce plants. So just as with gardening, there's a correlation between the kind of seeds you plant and the kind of results you get, right? If you want to grow tomatoes, you plant tomato seeds. You don't plant pumpkin seeds, right? Yeah, so it just doesn't happen that you plant pumpkin seeds and get tomatoes, or vice versa, planting tomato seeds and getting pumpkins. So yeah, so just as there's that kind of definite correlation with nature, gardening, it's the same with karmic seeds. The good karmic seeds bring happiness, good results, and negative karmic seeds bring unhappiness, bad results. But then the question is, well, how do we know if an action is virtuous or non-virtuous, if it's good or bad? So one way that it's explained in the teachings is by the kind of result that it brings. So a good karma, a good action is one that brings happiness, and a non-virtuous action is one that brings suffering. But then, we can't really see the future. We can't see this correlation between an action that's done at one point in time and a result that's experienced at another time, because there can be a long gap of time in between. And so we can't know that. But the Buddha, we trust that the Buddha has this mind that's able to see. He said before his enlightenment, as his mind was becoming more and more clear, he was able to see his own past lives and see the connection between actions he did at one point in time and then experiences he had at another point in time. So he could see how karma worked. And later he was able to see that with regard to other people and other beings. He could see beings doing things at one point in time, and then later, sometimes lifetimes later, he would see them having experiences that were the result of those actions. So he saw karma operating through his own direct perception. And so he gave advice about which kind of actions are positive and negative. And so we have this list of 10 actions. I think, have they been explained here? Is anyone? But you're kind of going through them in the sessions. So yeah, there's 10 actions that are negative or non-virtuous that we try to avoid. And then there's also a list of 10 virtuous actions that are the opposite to those. So and they're divided up according to body, speech, and mind. So the 10 non-virtuous actions, there's 3 that we do with our body, physical actions, killing, stealing, and then sexual misconduct or unwise, unkind sexual behavior. So those are already in the precepts, the 5 precepts that were explained earlier. So those are the 3 main actions that create non-virtue, negative karma and lead to suffering. And then with speech there's 4. One is lying. So again, that's included in the precepts. And then the other 3 are harsh speech, which is to say words that are hurtful to somebody else, like nasty, unkind, hurtful words. Then divisive speech, which is speaking in ways that divide people. Like if there's 2 people who get along with each other, they're friends with each other, but maybe you're jealous, or you have some reason you want to see them split up. And so you kind of you talk to one person about the other person, and you say nasty things. You're trying to divide this relationship, this friendship. So it could happen between just 2 people, but it could also happen between 2 groups of people, like 2 families or 2 countries, right? It happens on the global scale, right? This is one of the causes for war. People are stirred up to have mistrust and hatred and hostility towards another group of people or another race. So it's clear how that leads to suffering just in this life. But yeah, if we do that kind of activity, we engage in that kind of speech, then we are creating negative karma that will bring suffering in the future. And then the third of the four actions of speech is, sometimes it's called gossip, but I think idle talk is a better term because it isn't just gossip. The word gossip usually refers to talking about people, right? You know, who's going with this person and who's divorcing that person, and, you know, like those celebrity magazines they have for Hollywood celebrities, right? People love those things. Yeah, so this takes up a lot of time in our lives, this kind of talk. But in addition to that kind of talk, it also includes talking about sports or talking about food or talking about, usually things we're attached to, okay? Movies, music. So again, we can see, we spend a lot of time doing that. And that's the main reason it's harmful, is because we spend a lot of time in that kind of conversation. And it's, we have a limited amount of time in our life. We don't have it forever to live. So our time is limited, and to spend hours every day with that kind of talk isn't so skillful, so wise. Plus, it can also increase afflictions. When we're talking about things we're attached to, it increases our attachment, and it increases the attachment in other people who are part of that conversation. Or hostility, yeah? Can also, complaining about people or saying negative things about people. So that increases that particular affliction. So those are the reasons why that's considered not a virtuous activity, but something non-virtuous. Then the last three of the 10 non-virtues are activities of the mind. One is called covetousness, and that is related with attachment, coming from attachment. That involves wanting what somebody else has, and it goes beyond just wanting it. Like you see somebody with a new iPhone or a nice watch or a nice pair of shoes, and you think, oh, how nice, I would like that. It's more than that. You actually start scheming how you can get that for yourself. Maybe you can drop hints, oh, what a nice pair of shoes. I wish I had a pair like that. Maybe they'll give them to me. So you actually start, and even before you speak that way, but you're thinking that way. So it's just a mental activity, where you're contemplating how to get this object that belongs to somebody else and make it yours. Have you ever done that? We have to be careful when we go to people's houses, right? Yeah, it's easy to look around and check out what they've got. And I think it can also include people, not just material things, but coveting somebody else's partner or child or their cat or dog or parakeet. Right? It belongs to that person and they value it, they treasure it, they don't want to part with it, but you want it for yourself. So it's, it's kind of very egotistical and self-centered, and of course attached. Huge amount of attachment involved. And then the second is ill will or malice, and that is related with hatred, hostility, anger. And so that's when you're angry at somebody and you think of ways to hurt them. Have you ever done that? Or things you could do to them, things you could say to them, yeah, that will make them suffer. Even if you never do those things, you might just keep them as mental activity thoughts, but just to have those kind of thoughts and kind of indulge in them, feed them, not try to stop them. That's ill will. Then the third is wrong views, and that is to deny, to completely deny something that is true and that is important for our spiritual practice, according to this path. So examples would be karma, right? So it goes beyond just having doubt. It's normal to have doubt. We can't prove 100% that karma is true. Although we can see, to a certain extent, we can see cause and effect. Lama Yeshe would say that we can see cause and effect just in one day, right? We start off the day with we're in a really bad state of mind. We're kind of angry at the world, angry at people. And we go into our day with that state of mind. And the kind of experiences we'll have on that day will probably be lousy ones, right? You're going to get into arguments and conflicts, and you're going to be angry at people, and people probably won't treat you very well either. So we'll probably have lousy experiences with that state of mind. But if we start our day with a good state of mind, we feel really good about ourselves and about the world and our life, and really positive and caring, and we go into our day with that state of mind, then we'll probably have very nice experiences, right? And even if bad things happen to us, we probably won't be so upset about them. We'll just say, oh, never mind, no problem. Yeah? So just in one day, we can see how the state of mind we have and the way we act, the way we behave, will have effects on other people, but also on, the kind of experiences we have. So that we can see that for ourselves. We can see cause and effect, karma, in that way. But anyway, so if a person says, I don't believe in karma, it doesn't make any sense to me, I completely refute it, deny it, reject it, I'm not even going to open my mind and consider it. So you completely close the door of your mind to karma. And that is an example of a wrong view. And this is harmful because if you do that, then you won't even care about what kind of karma you create. You don't think it matters. Whatever you know, as long as you don't get caught by the police, you get away with what you do, it doesn't matter. There won't be any consequences. You can kill people, you can steal, lie, cheat, do all these negative things. Nothing will happen to you. So that's not very intelligent because, karma does work. There will be results of our actions. So that's the main type of wrong view that can be very harmful if you fall into that. But another one would be if you deny the existence of higher states of mind, like enlightenment. If you say there's no such thing as enlightenment, no such thing as Buddha or Arhats, liberation, nirvana, those are just myths, fairy tales in the scriptures. They're not really true. So that's harmful because if you don't believe in those states of mind, you won't be interested in attaining them, and you won't make any effort to attain them. So then you're limiting yourself. You're not allowing yourself to develop your potential. And then rebirth, reincarnation. Again, it's normal to have doubt about that. But if you go beyond doubt and you reject, you just completely close your mind, I'm not going to believe that. It's complete rubbish, complete not true. So you don't even consider the possibility of another life, other lives after this one. And that is also risky because then if you think, okay, everything ends at death, so again, it doesn't really matter what I do, just do what I feel like, make myself happy, and then I'll die and everything will be over. There won't be any continuation of this mind. So that could also lead to unwise and unskillful behavior. So those are the main wrong views. And like I say, it's not just having doubt. It's more than doubt. It's actually totally refusing to believe, refusing to accept those things, because those are points that are important for spiritual practice in the Buddhist path. So those are the 10 non-virtuous actions. So Buddha said those are the main ones you should try to avoid. There's others, but that's not like a comprehensive list. There's other kinds of non-virtuous actions not mentioned on those, like beating somebody up. But those are the main ones, and then we can extrapolate from those and kind of figure out others that are also non-virtuous. So Buddha said, try to avoid those, because if you do those actions, then you're creating a cause of suffering. But even if we do create those actions, we do those actions, or we have done them in our life earlier, it's not fate. Karma isn't fate. It isn't like carved in stone. You've done that action, you have to experience this bad result. But it can be purified. So there's no karma that is so bad that it can't be purified. It's definitely possible if we use those 4 opponent powers, especially feeling strong regret and then really trying our best to stop those actions and doing good actions, virtuous actions to counteract them. So we can definitely purify anything. But if we don't purify, then there will be suffering that we'll have to experience. And karma is a natural law. It wasn't made up by anybody. It wasn't that Buddha invented karma and then, laid down these rules and he's going to punish us if we don't obey. Forget about that. It's not like that at all. It's a natural law. Just like with nature. You plant certain types of seeds, you'll get certain types of plants. Or with the food that we eat certain types of food that will make us healthy and feel good. Other types of food that we might eat will make us sick and feel terrible. And that's not because of somebody out there deciding that. It's just the natural process, the natural cause and effect process of those kinds of foods in our body. So in a similar way, the natural outcome of actions that we do with our body, with our speech, with our mind, will be like this, either positive or negative, depending on the nature of that action. So we have to be careful. We came from a background in another religion that did talk about some kind of system of like the 10 Commandments, and we might carry that notion into our studies of Buddhism and think that it's the same thing. It's not like that. Karma wasn't invented by anyone. It's not enforced by anyone. Nobody punishes us or rewards us. It's just the natural cause and effect situation of a living being and their actions, and then the experiences they have after doing those actions. Does that make sense? So then there's those 10 non-virtuous actions, and then there's 10 virtuous actions. And the 10 virtuous actions simply mean you make a conscious effort to refrain from the non-virtuous actions, understanding that they bring suffering. So if you can understand that killing brings suffering, both to yourself as well as to the victim, and you say, oh, I don't want to do that, I want to stop killing, and you really make this conscious effort as much as you can to stop killing, then by that you're creating the virtuous action of non-killing. Yeah. So it's not that difficult to create virtue. That's one example of a virtuous action. We just say, I'm not going to kill anymore, and really try to live by that. And you're creating virtue. And so like those 5 precepts that that you're living by here, some people choose to take those 5 precepts for life. Or you don't have to take all 5, you can take 1 or 2 or 3 whatever you feel able to do. But when you take that, it's like you're making this promise to the Buddha, I'm going to live this way. I'm going to refrain from killing. There's kind of a ceremony and you make that promise, and then that precept becomes part of your mind stream. And it's said that as long as that precept is there and you haven't broken it, you're not going against it, it's continuously creating virtue. You are living in the virtue of non-killing, even when you're asleep and you wouldn't kill anyway. That precept in your mind is continuously creating virtue, good karma, the cause of happiness, the cause of attaining higher spiritual states. And so likewise with the other of the 10 non-virtues, if we make the conscious effort to refrain from stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so forth, we really try our best to refrain from those because we see that they bring suffering, then by that we are creating virtue, which is the cause of happiness. But there's other ways to create virtue as well, like being generous, giving donations, doing volunteer work, helping those who are less fortunate, homeless, hungry, and so forth. And then all the spiritual practices that we're doing, like reciting prayers and mantras and sutras and meditating. So those are all different ways of creating virtue, building up our good karma. Okay, so then number 2, karma increases. What this means is that when we do an action, there isn't just a one-to-one correspondence of one action brings one result, but one action can bring many results. And again, we see that in nature, like especially something like apple trees. You know, an apple tree grows from one small seed. It takes a long time to become a tree, but eventually there's this big tree. And every year, there are new apples. There's flowers and leaves and apples, lots of apples. So many, many, many results coming from just one cause, one seed. And so it's similar with karma. One action that we do, if it's not counteracted in some way, can bring many results. So like killing, for example, the action of killing, if we kill and then we don't purify that, then in general there's said to be 4 results of any action that we do. One is if it's like a complete action where we really intend to do it, it wasn't accidental, and we had an afflicted state of mind for doing it, and we carried it out, and it was a complete act. That being died, didn't just get wounded or we missed or whatever, but it died. It was like a full act of killing, a complete act of killing. And so that, if we don't purify that, it can be the cause for a rebirth, being born in a certain situation. And in the case of killing, it would be an unfortunate rebirth, one of those 3 unfortunate realms. And so that means experiencing a lot of problems in that life. And then later, even after we're out of that realm, out of that life, and we're back in the human realm, then we can have further experiences as a result of that. One is having the tendency to do it again, to kill again, right? Like being a natural born killer, which does happen. You find with little kids, some little kids, they're not taught to kill, but they just have this almost like an instinct to kill. So that comes from having done that before, having done that action before. And I actually say that is the worst kind of result, because it means you continue creating that karma again and again and again. So that's not good. Another result is having an experience that's similar to what you did to the other person, the other being. So in the case of killing, you killed a being, you took their life, then as a result of that, you yourself might be killed. Yeah, you could be murdered or killed by a wild animal, or having a lot of health problems and a short life, right? Lots of stories like that of somebody getting ill and dying even when they're still a child or, still a young person. So those are results of having killed in the past. You're having some similar experience to what you inflicted on someone else. And then another result is called the environmental result, and that is being in a situation that, well, in the case of killing or something non-virtuous, it would be an unpleasant environment like a war zone, right? As a result of killing, you might find yourself born in a place where a war is going on. And there's all this fighting and killing and bombing and horrible things happening around you. Or another possibility is a very unhealthy place, a place where the food and the water are, contaminated, and maybe it's difficult to get medical treatment, and so on. So that's another possible result of killing. So those are just some examples of different kinds of results that can come from just one act that is done and then not purified. So, but it also works on the other side, the virtuous side. One small virtuous action, like saving the life of an insect, right? You see an insect drowning in water and trying to get out, and you lift it out and put it somewhere where it can walk away. So that's a simple action, but you've saved a life. That's the opposite to killing. So that also has all these virtuous results, these good results of good rebirth, having this tendency to do that again and again. So again, we sometimes find with little children that they are like natural born compassionate beings, very compassionate. Also natural born vegetarians. I have met some of those, like from the time they're very young. Even if the family is eating meat, they just feel, no, I don't want to eat meat. So that's something to carry over from a past life where they live that way. And then having a result similar to the cause in terms of experience. So as a result of not killing and saving lives, you yourself will have a long and healthy life, right? So it kind of makes sense. And then the environmental result would be living in an environment that's healthy, and food and water are nourishing and clean, and it's peaceful. People aren't killing each other. So you're in a pleasant environment, nice environment. So yeah, all the experiences that we have in our life are the result of what we did in the past. So in a way we can guess what we did in the past. So yeah, being born as a human, we must have created some good karma in our past lives to be human rather than something else. And if we're healthy and if we have a long life, then these are all results of virtue that we created in the past. But when we have problems, like we get sick or we have accidents or relationship problems, those are a result of non-virtue, negative things we did in the past. Then the third characteristic is that if we don't create the cause, you won't get the result. So on the side of negative karma, that means if we don't do negative actions, we won't have suffering, right? Which is what we want. We don't want suffering. Well, it's up to us. We need to avoid negative actions as much as we can. But it also, on the positive side, it means if we don't do virtue, if we don't create virtuous karma, we will not have the good results of that. So basically, the future is in our hands. What we will experience in the future depends on what we are doing now. But we can also think of it in terms of our present experiences. Like I was just saying, that the experiences we're having in this life are the result of what we did in past lives. So if we're having bad experiences, well, that's the result of bad karma. If we're having good experiences, it's the result of good karma. So being able to accept that is helpful, especially when it comes to the bad experiences, because otherwise we may feel very sorry for ourselves and angry, and why is this happening to me? This isn't fair. Trying to find other people to point our finger at and blame for our problems and so on, instead of accepting responsibility. And so someone who believes in karma, who's really convinced about karma, wouldn't do that. Yeah. And in fact, Tibetan lamas, Tibetan practitioners, they say when bad things happen, we should feel good. We should feel happy, because it means bad karma is getting paid off. It's like our karmic debts are getting paid off, getting finished. And that means we have less bad karma, stuck in our mind. So when they get sick or they have other problems, they think, oh, this is good. My bad karma is getting purified, getting cleared away. And so that helps them to avoid getting angry, feeling sorry for themselves, blaming other people, and so on. So they did that even with their country being invaded by the Chinese communists, and they had a lot of suffering, a lot of problems, even going to prison, being beaten, tortured, and so on. But those who were real strong practitioners would say, well, this is our karma. We created the cause for this in the past, and now we're finishing that karma, clearing up that karma. And if you can really believe that and really accept that, then your mind can remain peaceful and not angry and hateful, and even have compassion. They would meditate on compassion for the soldiers and people that were harming them, instead of being angry and hateful. Yeah, so the experiences we have in this life, if we can see them as the results of karma, then they are like teachings on karma. This is what happens. So when bad things happen, you can think, okay, I really got to make sure I don't create more bad karma and purify the karma I did create. When good things happen, to think, okay, this is a result of good karma. I need to make sure I create more of that. So I will continue having these good experiences in the future. And not just be complacent and, what's that word? A sense of entitlement. Having a sense of entitlement. I deserve this. Well, but you did work hard. You did work hard in some past life to have what you have now. And if you don't, in this life, you don't continue creating good karma, then you might find yourself deprived in future lives. Then the fourth one is that karma you create doesn't get lost on its own. So once we create an action, the imprint of that will stay in our mind, and unless it meets with some countermeasure, it will continue staying in our mind, even as our mind goes from one life to the next, and then the next, and the next, and the next. So it just continues staying in our mind until either we purify it or get rid of it somehow, or it ripens and brings its experience. And so negative karma that we create can be purified, as we've been doing, by using those 4 opponent powers. So in that way, we can avoid experiencing the suffering results that would otherwise come. Now, when it comes to virtuous karma, although we don't want that to go away, it can. It's said that good karmic seeds can be lost or damaged by two main causes. One is anger, getting angry, depending on who we get angry at, how strong the anger is, how long it lasts. The worst kind of anger is getting angry at a bodhisattva. That's a person who has bodhicitta, this kind of spontaneous compassion and love and the wish to benefit all living beings and become enlightened to help all living beings. So someone who's really worked on that attitude and cultivated it to a very strong point. So getting angry at somebody like that is said to be the worst kind of anger, because that's someone who's totally dedicated to benefiting everybody, all living beings, ourselves and everybody else. And so if we do anything negative to such a person, and we're kind of indirectly harming all sentient beings. And so that's to be avoided, although we don't always know who is a bodhisattva. It's a difficult thing. So they say it's best to avoid anger at anybody, just to be on the safe side. But yeah, anger is very damaging. It can damage our good karma, which, yeah, that would be very sad, because it takes a lot of effort to create good karma. So we don't want to lose that. And the other way we can damage or destroy good karma is if we generate wrong views, like believing there's no karma, totally rejecting karma, or refusing to accept there's such a thing as enlightenment. So generating one of those wrong views is also said to destroy good karma. So we should try to avoid those two attitudes, anger and wrong views. But it's also good to dedicate our merit. So that's a way of sort of safeguarding the merit, like putting it in the bank so it doesn't get lost. So that's why we always dedicate merit at the end of our sessions of practice and teachings and so on. We dedicate our merit to enlightenment. By this merit, may I become enlightened and help all other beings become enlightened. So dedicating merit to enlightenment is kind of like putting it in a safe place, like adding it to this great, big, huge ocean of merit that's been accumulated by all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and other beings aspiring for enlightenment. And so once it's been added to that huge ocean of merit, it won't be lost. They say just like you pour a cup of water into the ocean, as long as the ocean is there, that cup of water is going to be there. It's never going to dry up and disappear. So, so that's the way to protect our merit from damage. So those are the general features, characteristics, rules of karma, how karma works. And I think probably don't have time to get to the next topic of, we'll leave that for tomorrow. But we do have a few minutes left if anyone would like to ask a question. Angela. Did I get it right? But you want to be Angela, don't you?
My 10-year-old aspirations are again coming true. I'm feeling a little confused and a little dense about this language. So by repeatedly contemplating the infallible effects of karma and the miseries of cyclic existence, reverse the clinging to future lives. The miseries of cyclic existence makes a lot of sense for getting to not wanting to cling to future lives. But with the infallible effects of karma, like, can you somehow make more express like that connection with the future lives? Because if with karma we know that virtue leads to happiness and higher states, and in a way we need those future lives in order to ultimately get to that full awakening. So I'm a little unclear about that relationship.
Well, the way I understand it is, yeah, what we're trying to do here is to give up our attachment to samsara and have the determination to get ourselves out of samsara. And so clinging to future lives means, oh, I want to have good rebirths in my future lives. I want to be born as a human being and become a movie star, or I want to be born in the God realms and enjoy the pleasures there. So, that kind of attachment that still sees good things in samsara, still wants to enjoy the pleasures of samsara. So that's what we're trying to overcome. And I guess, yeah, the infallible effects of karma is just to become really convinced that whatever experiences we have are the result of our karma. We are the creators of our experiences. And yes, we do want to get out of samsara. That's our ultimate goal, is to get out altogether. But that might take a while. We might not get there in this lifetime. In fact, it usually takes a number of lifetimes. And so while we're still on our way out, getting out of samsara, we need to make sure that in our future lives, we will have good conditions. We want to make sure we're born in the right kind of situation, the right kind of environment, like what we have now, where we can meet the Dharma and continue practicing the Dharma, so that we can continue following the path out. So we do want to get out of samsara and stop taking rebirth altogether, but we still need some rebirths on the way. And so we do need to be very careful about our karma. Depends on the karma that we create, what kind of lives. That's how I understand that one. And make sure we don't go the other direction to the unfortunate rebirths. Yeah. But it's not just rebirths, but also other, karma also affects other aspects of our life, like whether we're healthy, whether we meet teachers and get teachings and so on and so forth. So we just need to make sure that we're creating the causes to continuously be in situations in our future lives where we will be able to continue on this path and not end up in situations where it would be like a dead end, or maybe going in the opposite direction to enlightenment, liberation. Does that make sense?
I'm wondering, I have a ton of questions, but I'll just stick with.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Okay. I have a lot of questions, but this is my first one. What is reborn, the mind or the action? Or is it the same?
What is reborn? Usually we say it's the mind, it's our mind. And the mind is, or consciousness is another term for mind. So it's this kind of stream of experiences that's constantly changing, but there's no break in it. Like there's this continuous stream of experiences day and night while we're alive. It's always there, always experiencing things, always changing. So that continues right up to the end of our life. And then we die. And Tibetan Buddhism has a whole explanation of the process of dying. It doesn't just happen like that, but it's kind of a process. But at some point, our mind will separate from our body. Like right now, our mind and our body are interconnected, interdependent. And that's actually what keeps us alive. It's the presence of mind in the body is what makes this a living body. But at some point, the mind will separate from the body, and that's when the body becomes a corpse, a dead body. So it's really the mind, the consciousness, that leaves this body and then takes rebirth in another body.
How does it choose the next rebirth, the next?
Well, it doesn't really choose. It's not really a question of choice. For us ordinary beings, when you're at a higher level, you can choose. But us ordinary beings, we don't get a choice. So it depends on various factors. But like I said, important factor is the state of mind that we have when we're dying. And because by that time, we have a huge collection of karma, lots and lots of karmic seeds, not just from this life, but also past lives. And so some of them are good karma that could bring a good rebirth. Some of them are negative karma, which could cause a bad rebirth. So depending on the state of mind, it's like your mental state will determine which of those karmas will sort of come up to the surface and be the one that leads you to the next life. So if you're in a good state of mind, if you're going to have virtuous thoughts, virtuous feelings, then that's the kind of mental environment for one of the good karmic seeds to come up and be the cause for the next rebirth. But if you're in a negative state of mind, if you're angry and clinging and attached and fearful and so on, then that kind of mental state will cause one of the negative karmic seeds to come up and be the cause for the next life. So we don't choose. It just depends on the state of mind that we're in and what the karmic situation of our mind at that time.
So it's kind of the energy of our mind is reborn into another body.
Yeah, it's not, a lot of people believe in a soul. They use the word soul as if there's some kind of real me that will go on to the next life or heaven or hell or whatever. So Buddhism says there's something that continues, but it's not like that. It's not like a real me. It's just this kind of raw energy of mind carrying its imprints, carrying its karmic seeds that goes from this life to the next. And then once that's in a new life, it will take on a whole new identity. Yeah, it becomes a whole new person depending on what kind of body you have, what kind of parents you have, what kind of environment, society, your experiences. So you develop a whole new identity. You become a whole new person in that next life. Yeah, it's a lot. A lot. I don't know. There are some books that can explain more about this. Yeah. Open heart, clear mind. Yeah, could you find that for her? Venerable Children wrote a book called Open Heart, Clear Mind, which kind of explains these ideas in relatively clear, simple language. We'll get a copy of that for you.
Do all of the environmental results of virtuous action, of the 10 virtuous actions, do all of the environmental results, is it implied that all of them are conducive for creating more good karma?
I don't know. I'd have to look at them. I mean, I don't remember them offhand, but I think, they're generally kind of pleasant environments. But whether they're conducive for good karma, that would depend more on whether you have, like when we first come into this world, we don't necessarily have the inclination to create virtue. We need to be taught, right? Little kids need to be taught what is virtuous and what is non-virtuous and so on. So it depends on what kind of people we meet and what kind of education we have, what kind of conditioning we have. So it's not just having a nice, pleasant environment, but we also need the right kind of people, the right kind of information coming to us to be able to create virtue. But it also depends on how strong one's imprints are. Like, a child might be born into a family where there's a lot of anger and fighting, but that child may have a lot of really strong, positive imprints in their mind, and they're very kind and compassionate and develop in a really nice way in spite of the environment being not so conducive. So I think it depends on many different factors. There's a lot of questions. Karma always stirs them up. It's very complex. And there's some over here too. We'll get next. This lady had a question. Press the button.
Actually, I want to see if my thinking, or if I'm tripping, or if I'm actually thinking clearly. I will say that although I've been connected to the Dharma for a while, before I thought you die, you're gone, nothing more. But my exposure to Buddhism, I know better now. However, it's been terrifying, because now I'm going someplace and it's sort of up to me where I'm going, and it's pretty terrifying. However, and although I've continued to study the death process and get more familiar with all of that to try and ease my fears, when it's very likely that I won't remember the next life, this life, just as I don't remember, I won't, I'll be reborn and I won't remember my life, right? Which is not, I don't want that to be sort of a carefree attitude about it, but at the same time, one of the reasons to develop good karma is for the benefit of sentient beings, basically, because the consciousness will go on creating another life, and it can be favorable or not. Before, if I'm thinking about little me inhabiting another life, it's very scary, because, what am I going to get? Maybe I'll be a cockroach, I don't know, that kind of thing. So, but the new thought here is like, oh, I don't really, all I can do is give it my best shot in this life. And since it's likely I won't have control at where the karmic seeds will going, other than having done my best in this life, the real purpose to me, from what I'm hearing, is for the benefit of sentient beings, not for this me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's why we try and again and again and again to cultivate this thought. I want to benefit others. I want to make my life meaningful and beneficial for others. So we do that again and again, many times every day. And then that attitude becomes like our default mode. And then, we come to the end of our life, and if we can remember that, if our mind is clear enough and we have this strong feeling, whatever happens to me, wherever I go, I want to make sure that I can benefit others. I want my life to be beneficial for others. So if we can die with that state of mind, that's guaranteed we're going to have a fortunate rebirth. This is what my teacher says, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. He says, the best thought we can have at the time of death is compassion. Have this wish to be of benefit to others. And if we can have that in our mind as we're dying, then that's the really virtuous state of mind. So that will send us to a place where we can do that. And of course, we will benefit as well. We'll be in a good situation, but we will have that attitude, that inclination to benefit others.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. So we're brainwashing ourselves, really washing our brain, trying to get rid of this self-centeredness and ego and attachment and all those kind of things, and brainwashing ourselves to think of others and care for others and do things for others. So, yeah, the best thing we can do. So let's see, the man, who? can't see everybody. Oh, that guy, okay.
I wanted to pick up on the comment you made about a child born into an environment where maybe they've experienced someone else's anger. And so my question is, if children are subject to a form of abuse by a parent or a loved one, is it logical to assume that that's the result of the child's past karma? And if so, is the onus on the child to purify that negative karma through joyous action?
Through what action?
Joyous action.
Oh, joyous action. Well, this is a tricky question. You know, I think probably most children, you know, they haven't been taught about karma. They haven't been taught about this notion. Then it would be difficult for them to think that way. Oh, this is my bad karma, you know, coming back at me. And, you know, children are usually damaged by that kind of treatment. So psychologically and also physically, they can experience a lot of damage. If that child later in their life, you know, learns about karma and is able to accept karma, then they would be in a position where they could, you know, I think it could be very helpful, you know, to be able to accept what happened to them and not be full of hatred and anger towards the abuser and, you know, feel like a victim. But I think a lot of work needs to be done. Usually it takes a lot of time. You need help, professional help, therapy, and so on. But it all depends, you know. I've read about different cases of children going through abusive experiences, and some are terribly damaged and like for the rest of their life they don't recover from that. And other kids, you know, like I read about this one little boy, and his father was like really abusive and beating him all the time, and he just thought his father was crazy. And so, I mean, physically he was damaged by that, but mentally he just, you know, didn't take it too seriously, so he didn't end up with any long-term damage. So I think that shows another aspect of karma. Depending on, you know, your karma can ripen in the form of experiences you have, but also in the way you respond to your experiences. Not everybody comes out the same. Some may be more damaged, some less damaged. Some may end up, you know, psychotic or suicidal, and others are okay. They can live a normal life. So there's so many different factors that come into play with this kind of situation. But, you know, once you know, an abuse victim or a survivor does grow up and is able to deal with what happened to them, then thinking in terms of karma and also other aspects of Buddhist teachings, like the teachings on compassion, understanding that the person who did those harmful things was suffering themselves, and they created a lot of bad karma, and, you know, work towards generating forgiveness for them. That's really healing, if you can get to that point of feeling forgiveness and compassion. I heard about one little girl who was sexually abused by her grandfather again and again and again when she was a child, and I didn't read, it was a whole book. Apparently she wrote a book about her experiences. I didn't read the book, but I just heard about it. But then later in life, the grandfather was sick and didn't have anyone to help him, and this little, well, now she was grown up, but she helped her grandfather. She took care of her grandfather. So it just shows how healing can happen, yeah. And I think spiritual practice, spiritual teachings are very, very helpful towards that. And getting stuck in anger and hatred and bitterness and feeling like a victim are not helpful. So I think, yeah, it depends on the person, but I think these teachings can be very helpful for that kind of situation. So we should probably stop. I know there's more questions. We still have a few more days. And there'll be a question and answer tomorrow, right? Tomorrow. I keep looking at you, I'm sorry, it's venerable. Tomorrow there'll be a Q&A after lunch, so. Okay, so let's dedicate. Make sure this merit, this good karma we created doesn't get lost. Dedicate it to enlightenment.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lovesome's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Vajrasattva, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.